Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I appreciate the uh, multilingual greetings that are in the chat. It's wonderful to see everyone today. When we're waiting for this meeting to begin and I hear everyone entering the Zoom room with that doorbell sound, it reminds me, for those of you that have seen it, of the beginning of the Book of Mormon, which begins with a sort of relentless doorbell that then has everyone breaking into song. We're not going to sing together today, but I think the doorbell should cease soon, and we'll go ahead and get started as we're at time. I want to welcome everyone to this Global Town Hall meeting. This is a new format. It's a new year. So happy new year, whether it's the calendar year, the lunar year that you've recently celebrated. Happy new year to everyone. We're trying a new format, and this month's meeting is focused on a really important task that we are all going to embark on, which is our next strategic plan for Notre Dame International. And as a result, we will have a shortened session today for the Global Town Hall, which will be led by myself and two colleagues and good friends of NDI, who I'll introduce to you now, Lissa Bill and Jesse Schumann, both of whom are members of the team over in OSPR, the Office of Strategic Planning and Institutional Research. As I've said previously to the group, OSPR will be our guide and mentor throughout this process of strategic planning, but everyone in the division will have a critical role to play. So I've asked Lissa and Jesse to come today to talk about that process for how we, as a large division of close to too many people to be all in one room at the same time doing a strategic plan, how we're going to do that work together, even though we're continents apart and time zones apart. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lissa and Jesse, and then I will come back in at the end of this first half hour. So Lissa, Jesse, welcome.
Thank you so much, Michael. We're really excited to be here today. We're going to go over with you a few slides on sort of how we think about strategic planning here at Notre Dame. So I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. Oops. Sorry. Okay. Can everyone see my slides? Are you good? Okay, great. So we're going to give you a little context in terms of how we think of strategic planning. We're then also going to talk about sort of what the components are in a strategic plan, at least, here at Notre Dame. Others of you may have had experiences in other places, but trying to just get everyone on the same page from a vocabulary perspective of how we think about them. And then we're going to talk through the way all of you will have the opportunity to engage in this process sort of right out of the gate. So you will find, and I would imagine Jesse and I will probably come back at another point to this group somewhere along the line of the process, and you will see this same slide when we come back. We start every single presentation around strategic planning with this slide, and it's a quote from Eisenhower. Father John has used it. If you actually go back to the communication he originally sent out about the strategic framework, you'll see it in there. And its plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. It's a quote from Eisenhower. And that is not to say that whatever beautiful strategic plan NDI comes up with at the end of this process, that does not mean that that's not useful, but it's actually the discussions and the engagement that really are the most important piece of planning. And so, when Jesse shares later how all of you can engage, it's really critical that you do, because that is really what makes these plans rich and robust and relevant. And so I did not realize I was going to be using 3 hours there, but there you go for an 8 a.m. meeting on a Wednesday morning. So, I would just encourage that, where you're being asked to kind of engage along the way, that you do that. We always like to start when we're kind of beginning a process with anchoring to the university goals. Now we're at a unique point in time in that we're sort of straddling between two plans. So we've got sort of the current goals and then those goals that have already been developed or kind of updated for the strategic framework. So currently we have 5 strategic plan goals for the university. The first, ensure that our Catholic character informs all of our endeavors. This is strategically positioned sort of at the top. It's meant to be the umbrella of all that we do. Our second goal, offer an unsurpassed undergraduate education that nurtures the formation of mind, body, and spirit. This is what we think of when we think of kind of more traditional Notre Dame. This is one of the things that we've been really known for. Not only, are we giving them this unbelievable education, but we also are really trying to make sure we are attending to, not only the mind, but the body and the spirit as well. Our third goal currently is advance human understanding through scholarship, research, and post-baccalaureate programs that seek to heal, unify, and enlighten. And this is kind of where we spent, a ton of time focusing on research, over the last 10 years. This is where currently our graduate, if you were thinking about graduate education, that's where this would live. These 3 goals are really kind of the core or the heart of what we do here at Notre Dame. Luckily for NDI, you fit beautifully in really all 3 of these goals. And so the 4th and 5th goal, foster the university's mission through superb stewardship of its human, physical, and financial resources. We also would say data is something that we have to steward, at least for sure. Our office would say that. And then the 5th goal around external engagement, engage in external collaborations that extend and deepen Notre Dame's impact. Obviously, you fit in these as well. These 2 goals really are in support of the other, the first 3 goals. And so that's why you kind of see them positioned this way. As we move into the framework, there was a lot of discussion with the deans and the PLC and the executive officers around our current goals. And so you'll see that the first 2 goals are really unchanged. Those are, as you would see them in your current, in the current plan. The discussions actually kind of centered around sort of this focus on graduate education, a focus on research. And so knowing that those 2 goals or those 2 things were going to be really important, they really felt like they should be their own separate goals. So the new kind of 3rd and 4th goal are provide superb graduate and professional programs that exhibit disciplinary excellence, foster interdisciplinary connections, and engage the world's most pressing problems while attending to the holistic development of the student. And the research goal is advance human understanding through scholarship and research that seeks to heal, unify, and enlighten. So that's where, our framework as we, the university's framework as we start to build it and write, it'll be anchored in these goals. We often get asked how the university goals relate to the college goals, the division goals, department goals. And so obviously, we kind of do see this tiering and cascading that happens. It's very easy to see how it happens vertically. So we take obviously the mission and vision of the university, that informs our university goals, which then informs the college and division goals, and kind of so on and so forth. So that vertical alignment is really easy to see. I think particularly for a unit like NDI, the horizontal alignment is just as critical. And so often I'll use an example. So when I started in OSPRA, I just come from student affairs. I was actually working on, I think I'm with Michael on the first NDI strategic plan. I think I might have also been doing an internship with him at the same time and doing integrated planning. So there was a lot happening in NDI. And so we were, we were looking at this and we were talking about the horizontal alignment and things that we're showing that we were kind of seeing come up in the NDI plan really were critical for student affairs to understand and be a part of. And so understanding how your plan is going to connect to the colleges, to student affairs, to other divisions is really critical, and will be something we talk about as we kind of go through this process. One of the things that I think we've become more and more iterative, even especially as we've kind of gone through the pandemic, but we want these plans to be living, breathing tools when we help units create them. And so we really want people to think of this as a very iterative cycle. So we're going to go through this planning process. They're going to implement, they'll sort of measure how it's going, assess it, and then there's going to be some more planning. So that may be in the sort of annual process of kind of figuring out what the priorities are for the next year as they relate to the larger goals. But it might also be just, we tried this, maybe we need to tweak this a little bit. So this is something that should be not something that sits on a shelf, but something that is living and breathing. So Jesse and I obviously love strategic planning. It's what we do all day long. This is actually, I think, our third session of the week already this week. So we spend a lot of time doing this. So we understand the benefits of planning, but for those that are new to it, some of the things that we like to think about are, it is going to be something that gives all of you direction. And that's not to say you won't have individual things that you're working on, but you are an unbelievable division that are all over the world. And so having some clear direction, is going to help you all kind of achieve more and work together more collaboratively. It helps, think about sort of where your priorities are and what resources need to align with them. I always think about this, and also when we talk about the guardrails, we are not without opportunity here at Notre Dame. There will be new things that come NDI's way even after we've launched this plan. And so understanding what the priorities are and understanding what your guardrails are going to be helpful so that you can evaluate, is this something that we should really be working on? Is this a place that we should be focusing on? Does this align with our priorities? I talked about that horizontal alignment in the couple slides before, and what I love about planning is it is a tool for engagement. It's going to be a way for all of you to collaborate with each other, but it's also going to be a really great way for you to partner with teams across campus, which I think is going to be critical to really kind of achieving anything that you want to do in your plan. So hopefully you'll see that as a tool for engagement. It's also going to let people know sort of where you're headed. So what are your priorities? What are the things that NDI thinks are important and you're working on? And then obviously it's going to hopefully help you show progress, and you'll see it in kind of smaller ways and sort of what we call the inputs and outputs, the things you do on a day-to-day basis. But we'll work with Michael on thinking about what are some long-term impacts that NDI wants to measure. And so I think you'll have a nice mixture of kind of measuring both the short term and the long term here. Any questions before I pass it over to Jesse? Okay. All right. So I'm going to give this to Jesse now.
Good morning, everyone. As Lissa said, I think we are super thrilled to be working with all of you and to help you build your strategic plan. So kind of thank you for allowing us that opportunity. Okay, so the next part that we're going to kind of talk about is how to sort of build a plan. And as you can see from this pretty simplified picture, this is sort of our way of thinking about how we go about building a plan. So when we look at this picture, it kind of looks like a little bit like a treasure map, right? So the dot on the left-hand side is the current state assessment. And we're going to talk in more detail at the end of our time together today about that process. But it's important for us to kind of have a understanding of where you are today and what's relevant in your work. And there's a few ways that we can do this with groups, but the most common way is to do a SWOT analysis and to think about what are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of your division. And so at the end of our time together today, I'm going to kind of share with you how you all will have your first opportunity to engage in this process and to help us assess the current state and share your thoughts on that. So we'll return to that in a couple minutes. So kind of the first part of building the plan is doing that current state assessment. So that's the dot. Then when we kind of look at sort of the X, if we kind of skip over to the far right hand side, that X, that's the core elements of a strategic plan. And those would be the mission, the vision, and the goals. And that's sort of where you're trying to go. So the dot is where you are and the X is where you're trying to go. And so then when we look at that, the wavy line in between, that is how you're going to get there and what you're going to do to sort of achieve the core elements of the plan, the mission, the vision, and the goals. And so we like to think about those as the OKRs, so the objectives and the key results, which I think your division has been using in your work. And as you can see, it's a wavy line. It's not always a direct path to get where we want to go. And there's kind of ways that we kind of have to weave around maybe some bumps in the road. And so, but we still have a plan. We have those details to help us get to the core elements of the plan. So this picture just sort of maps out for you all of the elements of the plan. And this is sort of how we build out and develop the working sessions that we'll do with the working group to help develop the plan as we go through the spring semester. And so I had said that in the last slide that the mission, the vision, and the goals are the core elements of the plan. So your mission is your purpose, sort of what NDI does and who NDI serves. And it would be just a couple sentences that focus on your core functions and your customers. So it's your purpose. Who is NDI? Why do you exist? And what do you do? The vision is slightly different, where it's well, let me back up and say that the mission sort of could be evergreen from plan to plan. Sort of who you are and what you do could live from plan to plan, because it's kind of just the evergreen piece of who you are. But the vision, on the other hand, is where you want to go. And so it's at the end of if this is a 5-year plan for you all, at the end of the 5 years, what do you want to become? What do you want to achieve? So there's an aspirational and inspirational aspect to the vision statement. And it's kind of focusing on the future. And so it's sort of what we want to achieve at the end of the plan. So we're going to sort of build all of these pieces into it. So at the end of the 5 years, we can say we've accomplished the vision. And so more than likely your vision would change if you do a plan every 5 years, because you kind of have some new aspirational, inspirational goals in mind. The third sort of core element of a plan are the goals, and that's sort of what you want to achieve. Most divisions probably have 4 to 6 large bucket goals that they're kind of working towards. And those would be things that multiple departments within NDI can see themselves within each one of those goals. But yet they're still at the divisional level. So they're at a higher level of NDI, but multiple areas and departments within NDI can see themselves within those goals. And then the objectives and the key results are sort of more the details of how you're going to achieve those goals. And so a goal would live the life of a plan and would be, in theory, kind of that 5-year time frame. Where an objective, we like to think about those sort of on a 1-year time frame. And it's kind of breaking down that goal into chunks to say, okay, what's the first thing that we need to do to work on to kind of achieve this goal within the first year. And so you might have maybe 3 or 4 objectives for year 1 to help lead to that goal. And then you would kind of do an assessment at the end of the year and say, how did we do? What did we accomplish? And then what do we need to do in year 2 to keep moving forward to achieve that goal? And then the key results are the more specific details, where there might be a key party assigned to sort of monitor the progress of that. There's going to be a time frame, a shorter time frame associated with that, A lot of times we think about that in like quarters or semesters. It might be for over the course of the fall semester or over the course of the summer. These are the really specific things that we're going to be doing that's going to help move that objective forward so that the year-long objective can be accomplished over shorter increments. So those are sort of the elements of the plan, and that's how we build out the sessions with the working group. So we'll spend a session working on the mission and the vision. We'll spend a session working on the goals. We'll spend a session working on objectives and then the key results. Okay, so now this is the exciting part where we get to talk about how you all will be involved in the kickoff of this plan. And so we are going to launch a tool for you all today to participate in and to complete a SWOT analysis. So when we think about a SWOT analysis, there's 4 components to that: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And when we think about a strength would be something that's within the control of NDI, and it's helpful to your unit. So it's within your control and it's helpful to you. So those are your strengths. The weaknesses are also sort of within your control of NDI, right? They're internal to NDI, but they can maybe sometimes be a bit harmful to you and not as helpful as your strengths. Whereas your opportunities and threats then are things that are sort of outside of your control. So those might be things that are happening in the world or within government or within policy or just sort of outside of NDI's control in general, but they're having an effect on the work that you do. And some of those things are helpful. So those are your opportunities. So it's outside of your control, but it's helpful to NDI. Those are opportunities that exist for you all to kind of latch onto. Whereas threats are outside of your control and they could be harmful and they can be kind of some challenges that you might face and things that you need to then think about. So today, like I said, we're going to launch this tool and we're going to ask you to think about these things. And so when you get it and you begin to kind of think about how you're going to fill this out, I want you to think about this, and you might want to kind of do maybe a little pre-work in your brain, or maybe even kind of jotting down a few notes before you go into the tool to kind of answer the questions. But we want you to think about this from an NDI perspective. And so not as an individual, not as a kind of a smaller unit or department, but NDI in general, to kind of think about what are your strengths, your weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that exist. And we're going to have you kind of think about maybe what they all are, but we really only want you to input into the tool sort of your top 3. So you're going to see when you get it, there's going to be 3 boxes for you to put one idea into each box. So then you got to kind of need to prioritize and think through, what are my top 3 strengths of NDI? And you're going to list those in there. We're looking for like bullets or phrases. We're not looking for you to write paragraphs about any of these things. So we would assume within maybe 20 to 30 minutes, you would probably be able to finish completing the survey after you've taken some time to kind of think through what some of those things might be. We ask that you sort of stay away from direct comments about other individuals. This is sort of more to be at a higher level of NDI and not to call out specific individuals. And again, to sort of keep it at the divisional level. So what's then going to happen is today at 9 o'clock, we have scheduled for this to kind of launch and to be sent out, and you should be receiving an email, and it will come from the Office of Strategic Planning and Institutional Research, and the address is irsurvey@nd.edu, and it will then have instructions on how that you can participate. So you should receive that email at 9 o'clock today. That would be South Bend time, 9 o'clock South Bend time. And then we're going to leave it open for 2 weeks. So you have 2 weeks to kind of go in and complete that. And then you're going to submit those top 3 ideas for each strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat over the course of the next 2 weeks. If for some reason you have any difficulty in the Qualtrics survey tool, if you don't get the email, if you have challenges, and so we're using the we're using Qualtrics to kind of capture all this information. And there, because of the various countries that all of you are in, you might have some challenges accessing it. And if you do, please just reach out to me, and we have another method for you to be able to submit that information. If for some reason you can't open up Qualtrics and use it in your country, we do have another kind of backup method for you to be able to participate. So don't think like, oh, now I can't fill out this information. So kind of just reach out to me if you're kind of having trouble, if you didn't get the email, or if it's just not working for you in your particular country, then we have a backup method that I will send to you. And so we'll keep that open for 2 weeks, then we'll close it at the end of those 2 weeks. And then Lisa and I will read through all of those comments, and we will start to kind of theme it up into like bigger chunks, because we're going to have hundreds of responses, because we hope that you all are going to take the time over the next 2 weeks to participate. And then we're going to be able to kind of share back those themes with the working group as they begin to kind of think about the strategic plan. So for us, your engagement and your initial participation in this SWOT analysis is critical to kind of starting off this plan and making this plan happen, because we need all of your ideas so that the working group can take all those in as they begin to develop the mission, the vision, the goals, and the objectives and key results. So with that, do you all have any questions for us?
I think what I'd like to do, Jesse, thank you for that, both Jesse and Lisa, for your presentation. I think while people are formulating questions, let me try and tie a couple things together and project into the future the next couple of months, and then see if people have questions. I wanted Lisa and Jesse to go first because I wanted you to hear the expertise that they bring from OSPR. And it's important for you to know that this is an expertise that is guiding the university strategic planning process and has for the past year, right? And we're plugging in to that whole set of conversations and work and expertise by engaging with them for this process. You heard Jesse say that this process of mission, vision, values, goals, objectives, key results, that all of that is meant to help us understand who we want to be and who we want to become. And I think that's a really important thing for us all to hold on to at the start of this. But the only way we can think about that in a creative and forward-looking way is to remind ourselves where we've come from in the past. It's another way we're all different from one another is that we've been with Notre Dame International for different amounts of time, which means we have different sets of experiences or understandings of who we are as an organization, right? In the last strategic plan, my goal and our collective goal, as we agreed upon it and devised it together, I put that in scare quotes, I'll come back to that in a second, was to be recognized as a leader in the field of international education, to strengthen our global gateways and centers and the impact they have on the world and on Notre Dame, to support global faculty research, and of course, to diversify the campus through international students. And those things have served us well. We've now gotten to a point where we're ready, and it happens to time itself perfectly with where the university's at in its strategic planning, to reinvent ourselves anew. Do we want to keep some of those goals? Maybe yes, maybe no. Do we want to emphasize some more than others? Maybe yes, maybe no. But it's a question for the entire division. And that's why we're launching this in a town hall meeting. And it's also important because as I've said in other venues previously, in the strategic plan that we worked on 5 years ago, most of that work was done in South Bend. It was disseminated out to the global network with a, hey, are you okay with this? And then brought back. And that's not a great way to do strategic planning. One of the things that we learned, one of the many things that we learned in the pandemic, was that we're stronger together through active daily communication And by seeing ourselves as one division, not as individual gateways or centers or NDI employees or contractors or fill in the blank, right? We have to think about this process as us as one community in service to Notre Dame and in service to ourselves. And that's why this very first step of the process, but by no means the last, for everyone in the Zoom room and those that weren't able to be on the call today, is to complete the SWOT analysis. When you fill that form out and you take it seriously, and you have the chance to say, these are the strengths of NDI, these are the strengths of my team, these are the weaknesses, these are the opportunities, these are the threats, these are the things we haven't gotten to yet. That becomes a very critical common language for us all to share as we begin this process and get to the finish line of having a new mission statement, new vision statement, new goals, new strategic plan. So I want to remind people why we do this, because listen, Jesse talked wonderfully about the work and why strategic planning is important and also what the work will look like. But I want to remind you of why I think we do this. One, this helps us all focus on the work. You heard Lissa mention earlier, we make choices about what we do and how we do them. Jesse said this as well. When you have a strategic plan that you have helped craft, that is a check for you and a galvanizer for you, a catalyst for you to be able to say yes to certain projects and no to others. So if we know and speak a common language about where we're trying to get to, that should make it easier for us all to work together, to communicate better, and then to meet our goals, right? And that helps us become who we want to be and where we want to go. Another thing about this process that's really important to know from the start is that this is in part, you should think of this as a chance for you to focus on professional fulfillment. By helping to craft the language of a strategic plan, you're committing to a common shared set of values and expectations and objectives and goals to strive for individually, but together. And that will allow you to think, how can I gain the right professional tools and use the strengths and gifts I have to make NDI and Notre Dame more successful in this work? So that's a really important part. Sometimes a strategic plan can seem like other people are doing it out there and that it doesn't affect me and it just comes down from on high at the end. And I've worked very hard with Jesse and Lissa and with members of the global leadership team to envision what this will look like so that every voice counts and matters. Two last things in terms of why this is important. One is that this helps us focus on the university's work, but it also helps the university focus on our work, right? We are in the position to say we're working on these things to make NDI a stronger division and to make Notre Dame a more global place. And we've thought about it. We've done this intentionally. We know how this fits into the university's plans, but in sharing with the university what our goals are, they then gravitate towards us to think, how can we help them achieve their goals? And hey, how can those two things that student affairs and maybe athletics are doing fit into what NDI is doing? It allows other people to be more mindful of us. So don't think it's just hermetically only for NDI and only for the people in the Zoom room. When we create a strategic plan, we're creating it for ourselves, but for the university as well. And then finally, it allows us also the ability to communicate with people outside the division about who we are and what we do, whether that's a university partner you're working with, whether that's alumni, whether that's a government agency, whether that's a corporation that you're working with on a new program, whether that's faculty at another university. Being able to reference a strategic plan that we've all agreed on is really critical. So for all of these reasons, this is an essential piece of the work that we're going to be doing for the next 5 months. So I want you to go into it with a sense of excitement and adventure and energy and possibility. So now, last thing I would say about the practical side of things, and then open it up for questions for Jesse, Lissa, or myself. Here's the challenge for us as a division, and it's not unique to NDI. Yes, we're unique in certain kinds of ways in that we're speaking cross-culturally, we're speaking across time zones, as we always talk about, but that isn't so far off from what other people do in other places and other divisions. We're a large division of almost 200 people when you include everybody here, all the faculty who are teaching in our programs worldwide. All 200 of those people cannot be involved in every kind of discussion. There has to be a way to distill voices and to share in smaller venues so that everyone's voice can be heard and there's room for discussion and engagement, right? So in talking with OSPR about what best practices are for a division as large as ours, is they have encouraged me to come up with a working group that will represent the entire division and work directly with me and with them on this project. Again, those people who are on that working group, and I'll name them in just a second, are going to actively be in communication throughout this semester, working with their teams, working across gateways and centers to make sure that throughout the process, we're transparent, that we're open, that we're creative, that we're making sure we've considered different voices. And that's really important. And that's why when Jesse and Lisa both said, hey, think with your NDI hat on and think strategically about how you answer the SWOT, it's because we're all working to serve one another in this process, right? So think of the working group as ambassadors who will be going back and forth and helping in team meetings to have conversations with everyone. Everyone's voice needs to be heard. That was something that was really important to me in crafting this process because it didn't happen the last time. And so this is the way we'll do it, through this sort of representational democracy, if you will, of the working group. So in terms of those people, and you've heard Jesse mention that they'll share the results back with that group, and that group will be working with OSPR and with me. We have a mix of 5 people from campus and 5 people from around the global network. On campus, we have Leah, Hong, we have Reagan and Jonathan and Brian. From off campus, we have Josh from London, Diraj from Mumbai. We have Maria Mercedes from Mexico City. We have Lisa from Ireland, and we have Daniel from Jerusalem. I will chair the committee, and I will be supported by Suzanne, who will also help in that work, working also with Lisa and Jesse. This is a best practice that has served not only to other divisions well, but I want to be very clear, it's the exact same model that the university used itself for the strategic plan for the university, which we're finishing up right now, right? So I was a representative on the Global International Theme Advisory Committee. Hong was a representative on the External Engagement Committee, right? We're representing NDI, but we're also talking with people across the university about that work. So too, that's how this working committee will work. The working committee will gather once in South Bend in March, and once again in London in April, again, to make sure that we're going across the global network to do this work. And in between those critical meetings, we'll have communications back and forth with everyone in the division about this in small team meetings and in our upcoming global town halls. And that will get us to a final strategic plan with the goal of that being in May. I will stop there, but I hope that gives you a sense of pulling these pieces together to understand why we're doing this, why now is the right time, why it's exciting, and how we're going to accompany one another in this process. What questions do you have for Lisa, me, or Jesse? And if you want to use your hand button, you can do that, or you can unmute and speak up. I'm scrolling. I see no hands up. Okay. If you have questions, or if they come to you later, or you'd like to ask me separately, you're certainly welcome to do that. And of course, you can also reach out to your team leader as well, or to Lissa or Jesse. I'll end this portion of the meeting with 3 quick reminders, public service announcements. As you heard, the Qualtrics survey on the SWOT analysis will go live at 9 o'clock South Bend time. And you will be able to complete that. Please do complete it. It's very important that every voice is heard. Second, for those in South Bend on campus, I sent a reminder to you about completing the Improve ND survey. That's super important too. Again, a chance for your voice to be heard about processes on campus. And then finally, there's a third piece of engagement. Please, if you have not done so, fill out the communication survey about what you would like to see in the global town halls moving forward. Our hope is, as we move into the new year, that we get throughout the network ideas about how to make our time together more interactive, and make sure that while we're still communicating and reporting what's going on and what accomplishments we've had, that there are ways that we can discuss challenging issues, talk about current events, talk about the state of higher education in our respective countries. Please complete that survey too. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Then what I would like to do is ask the global leadership team to stay, and we'll have our regularly scheduled GLT meeting. For those that are leaving, have a great morning, afternoon, or evening wherever you are. Stay well and enjoy the day. Thanks, everyone.